The proudly British butter wrapped in a Union Jack on your shelf is owned by a dairy giant on the other side of the Atlantic, in Canada. And the garlic butter you melt onto your bread? Half the time it has no butter in it at all. The elegant French butter in the premium chiller is made by the biggest dairy company on the entire planet. The same one a French investigation accused of quietly pouring waste into its own rivers. And that word, grass-fed, stamped on the front in reassuring green. Nobody actually polices it. A lot of those cows spend the winter inside, on grain. Here's what they're all banking on you never doing. Turning the tub over and asking two simple questions. Who really owns this? And where has the milk inside it actually been? Because butter is meant to be the most honest food we've got. Cream, a pinch of salt, churned somewhere you could probably drive to on a Sunday. Your nan didn't need to know who owned it. It came from a farm down the road and that was the end of it. That's gone now. While the flags and the farm names and the gold foil stayed exactly where they were on the front of the pack. The story on the label stayed warm and local. The thing behind it went global and went cold. So stick with me because I've gone through the butter aisle properly. Not for what's whipped into the tub this time, but for who's standing behind it and where it really comes from. 9 names cashing in on a farm, a flag or a phrase that isn't theirs. And then, at the end, the butter that's still genuinely good and genuinely honest, which, as you'll see, is very often the cheapest block on the shelf. Plus the one habit at the chiller that tells you in 5 seconds whether you're buying butter or buying a story. First, let's be clear about how a simple food got this complicated, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Real butter is almost nothing. Cream, churned until the fat comes together, a little salt worked in if you like it salted. That's the whole product. And that simplicity is exactly the problem for the people selling it. If the butter inside every tub is more or less the same honest stuff, there's very little left to charge a premium for. So they don't sell you the butter. They sell you the story wrapped around it. A Union Jack, a green meadow, a cozy farm name, a foreign word that sounds like quality, the phrase grass-fed in a nice rustic font. And here's the catch with that last one, because it's the big one. Grass-fed, pasture-raised, farm fresh, a photo of a cow in a field, almost none of it is properly policed on a tub of butter. There's no firm legal line a brand has to hit before it can print grass-fed on the front. A herd can wear that word and still be housed indoors on grain and soya through the whole British winter when there isn't any grass to eat. Even the rich yellow colour you read as grassy can be topped up in the factory with added colour, so the shade in the tub isn't proof of a single blade of grass. The cow's life is often a shed. Now layer on 2 more things they'd rather you didn't dwell on. Where the milk's actually from, because country of origin on butter is loose and farm fresh packaging can sit on top of milk blended from more than one country. And who actually owns the brand, because some of the most patriotic, most heritage names on that shelf are owned outright by overseas multinationals. The farm is on the front. The head office is abroad. Quick ask before the countdown, and it genuinely takes 2 seconds. If this is useful to you, give it a like. And if you can see the hype button on this video, tap it. Hyping is the single biggest thing that tells YouTube to push a video out to more people, and every extra person it reaches is one more shopper standing at that chiller who finally knows what they're holding. We haven't got a marketing budget. The brands in this video have millions. So the only way this gets past them is you. Hype it and send it to someone who buys this stuff every week. Do that and let's get into it. Number 1. Country life. Let's start with the one that wraps itself in the British flag the tightest. Country life has built its entire personality on Britishness. The Union Jack, the values of the British countryside, that warm, patriotic, buy-British pitch aimed squarely at people who want to support their own. You pick it up to do the right thing by British farming. So here's the bit that sits oddly with the flag on the front. Country life is owned by Saputo, a dairy multinational headquartered not in Britain but in Canada, which bought the business back in 2019. Now, to be straight with you, the milk itself is British. That part's real, and it matters. But every time that patriotic tub goes through the till, the profit on it heads off to a corporation on the other side of the Atlantic. The Union Jack is doing a job on the front of the pack. It's selling you support British, while the ownership and the money sit abroad. You're being sold patriotism by a company that isn't ours. And while you've got it in your hand, turn it over and look at the salt, because this is one of the saltiest blocks in the aisle. Up around 2 grams of salt per 100 grams. We'll come back to what that actually means for you later on. For now, file it. The flag is the loudest thing on the pack, and it's the one thing in there that isn't quite what it looks like. Number 2. Anchor. This one's pure memory. A whole generation grew up on Anchor as the New Zealand butter. The singing cows, the green kiwi pastures, butter shipped halfway round the world because the grass over there was supposed to be the best on earth. That image is burned in. People still reach for Anchor today, except the New Zealand butter they're remembering quietly disappeared years ago. The Kiwi dairy giant that built the brand stepped out of the British butter market, and since 2012, the Anchor on our shelves has been made here in Westbury, Wiltshire, by the European dairy company Arla. From British and European cream, the name stayed. The singing cow's nostalgia stayed. The New Zealand actually left more than a decade ago, and it didn't go unnoticed at the time. When the sourcing switched, plenty of long-time buyers said out loud that the butter just didn't taste the way it used to. Hold on to that owner's name, by the way, Arla, because it's about to come up again on the most famous tub in the whole aisle, and there's a story attached to it. Anchor's only the warm-up, a New Zealand legend that's been made in Wiltshire for over 10 years, still trading on a country it left behind. Number 3. Lurpak. The big one. The silver and blue tub that sits in most people's heads as the gold standard. The proper butter, the one you treat yourself to, the name that just means quality. So 2 things are worth saying out loud about it, because the reputation is doing an enormous amount of work. First, it isn't British. For all that it feels like a national institution, Lurpak is Danish, another Arla brand, that same company we just met behind Anchor. The premium British butter feeling in your head was never British at all. Second, and this is the one that'll sting at the till, Lurpak has become eye-wateringly expensive. It's been creeping towards £7.5 a tub in some shops. And at the same time, the unsalted block quietly shrank from 250 grams down to 200. Less butter, more money, same trusted foil. That's shrinkflation, wearing a luxury label. And here's the part that really pulls the rug out. In blind taste tests, where people taste the butter without seeing the packet, Lurpak has been beaten by Aldi's own block, Nordpak, at less than half the price. Tasters picked the cheap one as the posh one, so whatever you're paying that premium for, it isn't a better tasting butter. It's the name and the foil. One last thing about who you're handing that premium to. Arla was at the center of the bovine story in 2024. That methane-reducing feed additive trialed on dairy cows, which sparked a wave of anger and boycotts when shoppers realized it had been happening without them being told. That trial is over, and the butter on the shelf today isn't part of it. Let's be clear and fair about that. But the instinct it revealed is the whole theme of this video. Change the product quietly and tell the customer never. The most premium butter in Britain is Danish, costs a small fortune, loses a blind test to Aldi, and comes from the company that taught the country what bovine was. That's number 3. Number 4. Kerrygold. The gold standard of the health-conscious shop. Kerrygold has become shorthand for good butter. Deep yellow, Irish, grass-fed, the one the wellness crowd swears by and pays extra for, precisely because of those 2 words, grass-fed. That phrase is the entire premium, which is why it's worth knowing this. Kerrygold's owner faced a lawsuit in the United States, filed back in 2018, which alleged that the grass-fed promise was misleading because those Irish cows aren't only eating grass. Through the wet Irish winter, when the grass isn't there, the herds are also fed grain and other feed. The case put a question mark over the one word the whole brand is built on. And remember what we said at the start? Grass-fed isn't a tightly policed term anyway, and even that signature golden color can be helped along. I'm not telling you Kerrygold is a bad butter, it's a perfectly real one. But the word you're paying the premium for is doing a lot more lifting than the grass behind it. When the headline selling point is a phrase nobody's required to prove, you're paying for the phrase. Number 5. The value British-looking block. Now down to the bottom shelf where the cozy farm packaging gets cheap. The value blocks, soft greens and creams, a little drawing of a field or a barn, a comforting, vaguely British, vaguely farmhouse look, for a fraction of the price of the names above. And people grab them assuming butter's butter, and that the field on the front means something. Here's the tell. Turn the cheapest of them over and look for the country of origin. And very often, you won't find one. Instead, you'll get a quiet little line like, produced using milk from more than one country. That's the giveaway. The friendly farm on the front isn't pointing at a place, it's pointing at a feeling. The milk's been blended from wherever was cheapest that month, and the rustic packaging is there to stop you asking where. It isn't that the butter's not butter, it's that the wholesome British farm it's dressed as doesn't exist. If a pack won't tell you which country its milk came from, it's telling you something anyway. Number 6. Salted butter. This one isn't a brand, it's a blind spot. And it's the one that quietly matters most for a lot of you watching. We all think about salt in crisps, in ready meals, in a bag of chips. Almost nobody thinks about it in butter, but salted butter is, gram for gram, one of the saltiest things sitting in your fridge. A standard salted block runs at around 1.5 to 2 grams of salt per 100 grams. And remember, Country Life back at number 1, up near the top of that range. Now, you don't eat butter by the 100 grams, but you do have it most days on the toast, in the mash, on the veg, scraped across a sandwich, and it stacks up without you ever clocking it as salt. For anyone keeping an eye on their blood pressure, which, let's be honest, is a lot of us past a certain age, that's worth knowing, because it's invisible. The crisps announce themselves, the butter doesn't, and the fix costs you nothing, which we'll get to. For now, the most innocent-looking thing in the fridge is quietly one of the saltiest. Number 7. Garlic and flavoured butter. The herb and flavoured spreads that feel like a little bit of bistro for a couple of quid. You melt it onto a baguette thinking, butter and garlic, lovely. Read the back though, and a lot of the time the butter's gone missing. The base of many supermarket garlic butters isn't butter at all. It's rapeseed or vegetable oil and water, held together with emulsifiers, flavourings, and a bit of colour, with garlic stirred through. It's an oil and additive spread doing a butter impression, sold from the butter aisle at a buttery price. The word butter is on the front because it sounds right, not because it's the main event. And the maddening thing is how easy the real version is. A knob of actual butter, a clove of garlic crushed into it, a pinch of parsley. Cheaper, better, and it's genuinely butter. If the tub of garlic butter lists oil before it lists butter, it isn't really garlic butter. Number 8. Vegetable ghee. And to finish, the one hiding in plain sight, often a shelf away from the butter, in a big, golden tub that looks for all the world like a traditional, wholesome cooking fat. Vegetable ghee, the gold tubs. Lots of people buy it as a cheaper, old-fashioned stand-in for butter or proper ghee, especially for frying and baking. Here's what it actually is. It's not dairy at all. Turn it over and the golden buttery cooking fat is very often simply refined palm oil, tinted with added colour to give it that rich ghee-like glow. That's the whole product, palm oil dyed to look like butter. And the older, cheaper versions of this idea, the hardened vegetable ghee that's been around for decades, are exactly the kind of heavily hydrogenated fat health advice has spent years telling people to cut down on. So you've got a palm oil block coloured up to impersonate a golden dairy fat, sold near the butter at a friendly price, to people who think they're buying something traditional. It's the purest example of the whole video, the look of a wholesome farmhouse food painted onto something else entirely. Right? That's who's been trading on the farm and the flag. Now the good news, and it's better than you'd think because honest butter is still everywhere in the same shop you already use. And it's usually the cheap stuff, not the dear stuff. Start with the swap that saves you money today. Remember Lurpak losing that blind taste test? The block that beat it was Aldi's Nordpak. And it costs less than half as much. Lidl's equivalent does the same job. These are proper, full blocks of butter. 80-odd% fat, cream and salt, nothing clever. And in a blind tasting, people preferred them to the 7-pound tub. If you take one thing to the till this week is that the best butter in the test was the cheapest one. Buy the cheap block with pride, and next pick a block that's honest about where it's from. The trick from number 6 works in reverse, a block that actually names its home. British, Scottish, a real county, a name dairy, is telling you the truth because it's got nothing to hide. Own brand British butter blocks are usually a fraction of the price of the premium tubs, list nothing but cream and salt, and tell you the country plainly. And if the salt from number 7 is on your mind, here's your free fix. Buy unsalted and add your own pinch at the table. It's the same price, and suddenly you're the one deciding how much salt goes on, not the factory. Want to go a step better without going mad on price? Look for organic or a proper named British dairy. Something like Yeo Valley's organic block, churned from Somerset milk, is widely stocked and a genuine step up. Better still, if you've got a farm shop, a market, or a good greengrocer near you, a lot of them carry butter from a named local dairy, often deep yellow all on its own, because the cows really are out on grass. That colour's the real thing, not a bottle of dye. You're handing your money straight to a British farmer and getting butter the way it's meant to be, in one move. And the most satisfying option of all costs almost nothing and undoes the entire con in about 10 minutes. Make it yourself. Pour 600 millilitres of plain double cream into an electric whisk or mixer and whisk for 3 minutes. It goes to whipped cream, then past it, and then quite suddenly it breaks. A lump of real yellow butter and a pool of buttermilk. Pour off the buttermilk and keep it for pancakes. Rinse the butter under the cold tap. Squeeze the last of the liquid out, work in a pinch of salt if you want it, and that's it. Real butter. One ingredient. No flag, no foreign owner, no factory, no story, just cream in your own 2 hands. Do it once on a wet Sunday with the grandkids and they'll be amazed butter even comes out of cream. And you'll never look at a 7-pound tub the same way again. If there's one thing to take away from this whole video, it's a 5-second habit at the chiller. And it beats every marketing budget on that shelf. Turn the pack over before it goes in the trolley and ask it 3 things. 1. Does it actually name a country a real British place? Or does it hide behind milk from more than one country? 2. Read the ingredients. Does it say cream, salt, and nothing else the way real butter does? And 3, the new one. Have a quick think about who owns it and what you're really paying the premium for. A better butter or a flag, a foreign word, or a phrase like grass-fed that nobody's checking. Honest butter names its home, keeps its ingredients short, and doesn't need a story. Everything else is selling you the story instead of the butter. And if this opened your eyes to what's behind the friendly farm on the front, do me one favor before you go. Hype this video, give it a like, subscribe, and send it to someone who still reaches for the gold foil out of habit. Every share puts this in front of one more person who gets to spend their money on real butter. And quite often, spend less. Tell me in the comments which everyday product you want me to pull apart next. The fridge and the cupboard are full of friendly farms that don't exist, and we're going to keep knocking on the doors. Until next time, read the back, name the country, and trust the cow, not the company.